Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. Here is one of the reasons why you should always look into your family history, genealogy, all of that. Blown away when I just found out who this gentleman is related to. And I find it interesting, but also makes sense when you know that he is a tech guy. He's the senior research scientist at Space Whale Technology and has had an interesting life so far, overcome a lot of challenges. And he's back with us. Lots to talk about today with Jackson Pleis. Welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Steve?
Doing very well. Very well. All right, let's go right to it.
Yeah,
You,
so in
yeah.
a couple of the past shows, I've sort of talked about some of my genealogy with my parents both being, extremely smart, my grandparents going back to professors. And recently, like last week, my mom was talking to her cousin and she found out that her cousin is related to Nobel or the person that started the Nobel Prize, Albert Nobel. Which people don't quite know how he started the Nobel Prize if they haven't looked into him. In fact, he is the inventor of dynamite. So
Wow.
when he invented dynamite, it was used as weaponry and it's also used for construction and lots of beneficial things, but also obviously war and things like that. He felt very, let's say, bad about his invention of the dynamite and how it contributed to killing of a lot of people. So, with the proceeds that he made from selling and the IP around the dynamite, he used that to create the Nobel Prize that we still use to this day for specifically mostly sciences, but there's a Nobel Prize given out for most categories for professionals that get to a place where they make such a significant contribution to the world, not just their own country, that they are awarded with a Nobel Prize, which again was started all this time ago. So it's interesting for me to learn this recently, especially having gone through, learning about my mental health and learning about, basically learning about who I am and having to sort of rediscover all of that after getting off the alcohol and the narcotics. And so, yeah, my mom sent this out to me last week, and I go, wow, this really sort of adds to the story, sort of adds to some of the stuff I had talked about in the past, where I talked about dying, being brought back to life, how our energy is still maintained and conserved in the universe. So, for some reason, I sort of feel this sort of like pull to him, having invented dynamite. I work in, combustion and plasma physics for clean energy and stuff, but very easily those types of technologies and inventions can be used for war or for danger, for harmful purposes, or for, the wrong reasons. So oftentimes as an inventor and as an entrepreneur, we don't always think of the ramifications of the things that we invent along the way, especially when it comes to these like high dangerous, high energy fields of study. So, yeah, so I just found it interesting that people should really look into this genealogy because it could also give them some insight into potentially like their own mental health, their own well-being. And so, yeah, I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Steve, but
I am in the last year learning why it's really important to look into your ancestry. And through one of the DNA sites, I discovered that I have a half sister. Never knew.
wow,
Yeah. And I met her 2 months ago, barely even 2 months ago. It was wonderful. She's
wow,
younger than me. Would have never known unless I was on one of these sites.
right.
And then go a little bit deeper. Somebody said, just a connection. I'm going to look into your lineage, what's going on there. So I found out that I'm Lithuanian, never even knew, like a
Right.
pretty substantial
It's a pretty
amount.
small place to come from, so it's like
Right, right. But
normally they go, yeah.
you think one thing based on what your parents have told you in
Or
terms of
the
your,
spellings of your names or
right.
like, right,
And weirdly, at least I find it kind of strange. I've always had this affinity for the 1800s. I don't know what it is. I can look for hours at photographs because photography just emerged, toward the mid to the end 1800s. A little bit of technology. I like the simpler way of life,
I was gonna
but
say the simpler way of life, and also that was, the dream, the time when people could really turn their dreams into reality. And I recently just had a conversation with my best friend, and he's working three jobs to support his family, and barely really saving him a lot to put down to try and buy a house. And so it's like, wow, my generation really feels like we've lost out on a lot of these opportunities
mm,
that our parents and like older generations got the chance to have, buying houses and having these families. And even myself growing up, we were able to afford to build a house on a lake growing up and things like that. But I can't even potentially conceive of that in the near future if something doesn't change.
to your point, what I learned in my family history, I said I love looking at pictures of the clothes and in the 1800s. Like, how did they do that? Like, it looks like
Attention to
it was.
detail, and like the people put a lot more time and effort into the things they created because they typically did the things they liked because they were passionate about it.
Yeah.
And then there was also a lot of people that had to do certain things they didn't like, but it was enough of a paycheck to afford them to do their hobbies or pursue their
Well,
life goals outside of work, where they're not
to
working three jobs.
this is to your point. Then I learned that my father's father, I believe his father, came from Lithuania, was a tailor, weirdly enough. And here I
Yep,
am talking about looking at the detail in the clothes.
the
And
design.
he worked very hard, eventually came to New York and just worked a lot and was able to buy his family a place to live.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Did you know there's a specific type of personality that some people are born with that essentially, I can't remember the name of the personality disorder, and they change it a lot with the DSM, which is the mental health
Is it
guidebook,
DSM
basically.
5, I think it's
Yeah, they're
called?
on the DSM-5 the last time I read it. But
Okay.
there's a part of a personality that some people are born with where they look at something, clothes, a lamp. They look at a lamp, but instead of just looking at it and seeing a lamp, they look at it and they analyze every single bolt. They analyze every single nut. They analyze
Hmm.
the washers. They analyze how the thing was put together, why it was put together. It's a very, say, uncommon type of personality because as a kid, as your brain's expanding, this is okay because your brain is learning and absorbing and rewriting the neural connections. But then as you get older, if you didn't, let's say, learn about it through your life or weren't given an opportunity, or let's say your family was in a horrible accident and you lost your parents and you end up in foster care, but you were born with this specific type of personality, what ends up happening is if they cannot essentially increase their IQ level throughout their younger lifespan up and through like their college levels, that personality almost always results in mental health problems, mental disorders. People will tend
Hmm.
to, I don't know if you've realized this, but a lot of these mental disorders don't really become a big issue until we become about 30 years old. So schizophrenia, for example, really doesn't become prevalent until you're a bit older. And unfortunately, if you haven't been diagnosed with it, you end up using like alcohol and these other substances to try and calm yourself down. And then when you're 30, you're not living with your parents anymore. Let's say you don't have a partner and you're by yourself and you're trying to figure this out and you don't know what's going on with yourself. It becomes a big issue, for adults and myself included. And so had I not gone to school and studied physics and had the genealogy that I do have from my both sides of my parents, my grandparents, to have a high IQ along with that type of personality, yeah, it can be really detrimental for people because the normal population, we don't does not look at something and says, oh, how is that thing put together? What is the coding? What is the software behind that? What is the this, that, and that? Why does that thing operate the way it operates? Because it would literally drive them crazy, which explains a lot about why I've suffered so much as well through
Wow.
times.
So would you say that you're somebody who pays attention to detail?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I've been taking things apart since I was a kid. I still do. I, take apart the new phones when they break and understand what's going on with them. And it's not something that I can just turn off and be like, oh, yeah, not going to want to be interested in how that whole thing is put together when I'm actually interested in something that I use a lot or I work with, or like I'm interested, cars and certain things and technologies. I
Hmm.
have to, my brain, that's the way I was born. I have to figure out how these things are put together, how they're made, how they work, why they operate the way they do. And yeah, so people, and I've met people that have similar personalities that didn't get the opportunities that I got, that, ended up going in the Navy or going in, some type of job that they had to get some way of living, but their brain still operates the way that it, like mine does. And so they crave that knowledge. And so when I've met people like that, they have a million questions to ask me, and I am happy to answer them for them. However, what I've found is that they want to try and talk about this or explain their ideas, but they just don't have either the mathematical backing or like the fundamental building blocks of, how we got to these points. And I'm worried that this is going to actually get worse in the future with our, the next generations, specifically around electronics, around artificial intelligence, and around, the things that are much harder to understand. They require quantum mechanics understanding and how electrons operate, which is wave particle duality. So it's a much more complicated topic. But when I was a kid growing up, I had the opportunity to learn how those things were developed. So that allowed my brain to really grasp it. And so I don't like lose sleep overnight on how a cell phone works. But people that are born with this type of personality these days are going to run this risk of, I have no idea how this cell phone does all these amazing things. And with intelligence taking over, it's like really going to baffle these kids that don't understand this fundamental physics with technologies that are exponentially increasing. So it's definitely going to be an interesting thing to see what happens to people's mental health, as we get so much more technologically advanced.
Do you find that you get great satisfaction out of looking deeper into devices, electronics, to see what makes them tick?
I wouldn't say it's like a gratification. It's almost like a requirement for my brain. So if I have something that I have no idea how it works, I will get so frustrated with it because, I have this, especially if I need to use it a lot, like a phone or like laboratory equipment or something like that, I can get really frustrated at it, especially when the serotonin in my brain kind of goes for a joyride. And that'll kind of send me off, and I'll get mad at the electronics, and I'll get frustrated and take them apart and either try to fix them or trash them and get different ones. So it can almost be more of a frustration than anything that I still deal with this.
Hmm.
Every once in a while, it's sort of like an aha moment, and it will drive me down another path of other technologies or other research that does intrigue me. So understanding, potentially developing a new type of technology based upon learning about a previous one that I took apart or something like that, that part intrigues me. But the fact that I have to figure them out no matter what is sort of like a burden.
Okay. So, I guess I would come under the category of a curse and a blessing at the same time.
100%. Yeah, you got it.
Hmm. By one aspect, you learn about the technology by delving deeper into it, taking it apart, whatever it might be. On the flip side, it's I gotta I gotta do this. If I don't,
Right, right.
you know,
And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to sleep until I figure it out. Right.
right.
So yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit too much, especially when a lot of things are going wrong all at the same time. Right. So if this has happened to me in the past where like my laptop stopped working, my phone was having problems, and then and then I was also working at the same time. So it was just like a whole combination of these things where I'm trying to fix the problem on all of my electronics myself because that's just how I operate, as opposed to being like, okay, I'm just going to take this laptop to the, computer repair place. It's like, instead of me just being like, yeah, that's the simple option to do because I've got too much on my plate, my brain immediately goes to, I'll just fix it myself because I know what I'm doing.
Right.
So yeah, it becomes kind of a battle sometimes, which can unfortunately propagate the mental health problems further, you know, making me more upset, making me, more, punching my hand, breaking things and getting more upset. So it's like I've luckily getting older, learned which ones now I'm just like not gonna try and deal with. Like, even though I want to, sometimes it's easier to pass some of this stuff off now. And
Sure.
and unfortunately, some of these electronics are designed that way. So some phones, for example, you used to be able to replace the screens, the touch screens.
Yep.
Certain models now, you can't do that yourself anymore. They basically glue the screen into the place, and even when you do try it, all the old glue sort of creates like a gooey mess, and so the new screen doesn't really seal right, and so yeah, it can become a whole process of stuff. And so I
Hmm.
just have so many taken apart electronics all over the place, and
Yep.
becomes
I
a little
get it.
bit.
My mom used to tell me that I took apart, even at 2 years old, flashlights, radios, and all of that. But I learned, and
Right.
that actually started my broadcast career because that's what I did. Everything in this studio, I wired. Part of it, I built little, gizmos here and there.
And then if something goes wrong, you, of course, know how
Yep.
to fix it
Yep.
right away. You don't have to call someone in. So it totally
Exactly.
makes a lot of sense for people in our industry and, radio shows and
Sure.
a lot of audio equipment, camera equipment.
So let's pivot over to the Olympics. Lots going on there.
Yeah,
As
I love
we
it.
at this moment, Team USA doing fantastic.
Oh my gosh. So, oh man, she's killing it. Biles.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Yep.
Amazing. While pregnant, she just found out about that. That's amazing. Wow. Yeah, just the entire team. Gotta give Snoop Dogg some credit, man. He's really showing up for the USA and supporting all of these teams and some of the sports that a lot of people didn't even realize were in the Olympics, which I
He,
think is wonderful because some of these athletes train for or years or longer to get to this opportunity. And a lot of these sports, there is not a lot of money in them, and these athletes, are doing it out of their pure love for the sport, not for the financial benefit. And so it's been really wonderful to see Flavor Flav and Snoop Dogg and some of these other high net worth celebrities step in to help some of these athletes, cover their rent or things like that. It's been really, really
mm,
heartwarming to see this happen, especially during a time when the entire world is under so much chaos with wars and politics and finances and just such a whirlwind of things and news happening right now. It's a really great thing to see the Olympics pull together the world to some extent and,
yeah.
get us to bond over something that it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
It's almost as if the Olympics this year, thanks to Snoop Dogg and some of the new events, it's brought it down to earth where the average person can get into it. Where previously it seemed like it was a little highbrow, if you will. Sometimes if you're not a sports fan, you'd be like, I'm not going to look at it. But I was sitting with a couple of friends the other night. TV was on in a restaurant bar, and I was looking at ping pong. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow.
It's amazing. Yeah. You should see there's a Bruce Lee YouTube video where Bruce Lee plays ping pong with a set of nunchucks. So not a paddle. He's using a set of nunchucks. And I think he's playing against either one or two professional table tennis players. And he is beating them with the nunchucks. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, if you
Yeah,
like table tennis, there's a pretty crazy Bruce
wow.
Lee video out there.
And then, of course, we have breakdancing this year
Right, which is
included.
such an interesting thing because like they were never able to really judge it until now, without all these new metrics and different things they've come up with, which I find interesting. It'll be hard for the people that win first, second, and third to like really be able to say, yeah, yours was without a doubt the best one, but I do like that they are incorporating all of these new sports, and it's allowing the younger generation to come up with new events and things like that, because some of these old events, they have world records and Olympic records that are so hard to break. But one thing that I've noticed this year, in particular in Paris, is a lot of these records are starting to be rebroken again, which, oh my gosh, I don't know why, but it seems like it's either maybe nutritionally related or
Hmm.
just better advancements in sports medicine or better advancements in looking at the physics of how the sports works to figure out the ultimate limits. Not totally sure on all of it, but whatever they're doing, it's obviously working to see these Olympic records be broken, to see these world records, even some of these world records even be broken. It's really encouraging and really exciting because some of these are such old records, like from the 80s,
Sure.
basically.
And even the whole aspect of breakdancing, it's creative expression, which
Totally.
now it's included in the Olympics. And of course, now we have surfing, right? There's another one. Wow.
Right. Right. Or like the airsoft thing. That one's been getting a lot of the silver medalist from the airsoft who shot the gun without wearing any special eye protection, and like that's been a huge hit. Oh man. Have you seen
Was that
that?
I
The guy
saw
that took the silver medalist in the 10 meter, I believe it was, airsoft competition, doubles. They took silver medal, and the guy that basically got the silver medal for the team, all the other competitors were using these highly sophisticated like glasses with multiple lenses, right? So like they could zoom in through the gun sights and to the target.
hmm,
Well, the guy that, or the team, the Turkish team that essentially took
yes.
silver medal, it was a team, it was a woman and a man. So it shouldn't counter out, but the man in particular had the shot that of him, getting the silver medal was pretty impressive because he wasn't wearing any special eye protection with special lenses. He just had on his
Yeah.
regular glasses. And instead of even having nice big earphones on, he in fact had just like the little pop-in ones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then instead of having both his hands on the gun, he's got one hand in his pocket, and like it's just like a classic shot. And like and then so he's sort of getting more fame than the people that got gold medal, because it's like, look at the people that won the gold medal, they had, 20 different lenses on their glasses and all sorts of different technologies that they brought to win, basically. And the guy that almost won, basically, did it without any of those assistants,
Like
which
he
was
just
pretty cool.
walked up and just but the the part I love the most about his story is he only recently picked that sport up because
Which
he
is,
was getting divorced
yeah,
and he just, needed something to get his mind off of it. And after he won, he gave a statement and said to
his
his
dog.
ex-wife,
Yeah,
I want my dog back.
he was just joking, but yeah, I mean, gotta have a little bit of a sense of humor, which is
Yeah,
great.
give him a lot of credit. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but that's an amazing thing you should point out. There's actually a movie called Eddie the Eagle, which is about the Winter Olympics, but the Olympics, it's the same thing. In fact, the guy that started the Olympics in general started it so that the athletes would, if they made it to the Olympics, it was all about trying your best and doing your best. And there's a movie about this English guy that became a long distance ski jumper, who his whole entire passion of his whole entire life as a kid was he wanted to be compete in the Olympics because it's the highest
Sure,
level of
sure.
athletic sports competition in the world. And so that was his goal. And he tried to do downhill. And then he basically became like the second or third first long ski jump out of out of the UK, and ended up obviously placing, very far down, but ended up making it to the Olympics, and ends up
Amazing.
pushing himself, and ends up actually setting the like UK like world their own, national record. And he ends up doing it like the first. It's pretty amazing, and
Super
so
cool.
I highly suggest people see that movie if they're interested in the Olympics and how the Olympics got brought about. It's pretty good.
Great having you on. We're just about out of time.
Yeah.
For anybody that wants to learn more about you and Space Whale
I'm also the
Technologies.
president of the company, by the way. So I'm the senior research scientist. So
Sure.
I'll put my head in it, but I'm also the president. And so if anybody's got any questions, feel free to reach out to me through
Sure.
Space Whale Tech or Everything Space Whale's got a Shopify store. So
Spacewhaletech.com is the
main website for consulting
exactly
and
right.
R&D. Yep.
Yeah, Jackson, great talking with you today. And
You as well.
I mean, lots we covered. Congrats on finding out that you're
the
Millwall
lineage.
connected.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, it's super cool.
It sort of puts some things in perspective. Right?
Yeah, I'm not surprised though, to be honest. But
neither was I.
Yeah. All right, we'll catch up next time. Thanks again.
Yeah, see ya.
Coming right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.